What's up everybody, I'm Tim from Timber Ridge Gifts, and in today's video we're going to be learning how to do double and triple wick oversized containers. Now finding the proper wick for a candle can be hard enough, but when you throw in the fact that a container this size is going to require 2 or more wicks, it can really cause a lot of anxiety. But by the end of this video you're going to see that it's a whole lot easier than you think. So to get started we're going to need basic candle making supplies. Got our wicks, wax, fragrance oil, and of course our containers. For this video I've chosen the Maraca from Dream Vessels. I've chosen this one specifically because it's kind of pretty. I like it. And it's oversized. It's definitely going to take more than one wick. And if you'll notice, it's sort of tapered at the bottom, so you don't have a consistent width going all the way top to bottom. That may seem like an issue, but in this case it's really not. I'll show you how to deal with that here in just a second. Additionally, other supplies we're going to need are paper, a measuring tape, a compass, a wick guide, and of course a lot of imagination. It sounds like a lot to take in, but it's really super simple. Let's show you how we get started. So first we're going to take our container. This is the Maraca from Dream Vessels, and we're just going to measure the width. So the very top is 5 1/4, bottom is about 4 1/4, and the middle is about 5 1/2. So that 5 1/2 is the measurement we're going to go with. Because there's only about a 1/2 inch difference from top, middle to bottom, we're really not even going to worry about it too much. Now if it were some extreme type container where the bottom circumference was 3 inches and the top was 10 inches, obviously that's going to be an issue. It's going to be very difficult to make a candle out of that. There'll be a lot of things we would have to consider. But for this, the measurements are so close, it's really not going to affect it as it burns down. So we're just going to go with the widest dimension, which was 5 1/2 inches. So now as we plan this out, we need to be able to visualize those 5 1/2 inches in a different way than just looking down at the top of the container. To do that, we're just going to take our paper and our compass. We're going to set it to 5 1/2 inches, and we're just going to draw out the circumference of our container. Now this is a visual representation of the width of our container. This is what we're actually going to draw on and plan out which wicks and what configuration we're going to use them in before we ever put a wick into that container. Now the bad part about wicking a container like this is there's no exact science to be able to look it up and tell you exactly what wicks to use and what configuration to put them in. But that's also a good thing because it allows us a lot more leeway, allows us to use different size wicks, and to be able to use our imagination a little bit more and work with the supplies that we've got on hand. So now is where we start to visualize and determine how we're going to break this up. So let's say I wanted to double wick it. I can just look at it and visualize that I would have to have 2 big circles taking up equal portions of this larger circle. So this is where I turn to my wick guide. I like to use the one from Candle Science. I personally think it's the best. So we're going to choose our type of wax, and we're going to choose the dimension that we're going to be measuring. Now they do have a section on here that talks about double wicking, but that's not really helpful because our container is a lot bigger than the dimensions that they use. So we're still going to have to use our imagination and come up with our own answer. So we're going to start with the wick suggestions for an extra large container, 3.3 inches to 3.79 inches. And it tells us that a CD22 or an Eco 16 would be the best wicks to use for a container candle that size. So we're just going to apply that to our drawing. So an Eco 16 is going to be good for a container candle on average 3 1/2 inches. So we're going to set our compass for 3 1/2 inches. And now we're just going to apply this to our drawing. We're going to place the pencil on the edge. Let the compass point fall pretty much in the middle. And we're going to draw out our 3 1/2 inch circle. We've made the decision to double wick this one, so we're going to do the exact same thing on the other side. Try to let that compass point fall as evenly in the middle as the other one did. So we've got the circumference of our container drawn out and the circumference that the 2 Eco 16 wicks will cover. So we've got our first wick, we've got our second wick. You can see this area up here that isn't touched by the circumference and the shaded area in the middle that is the overlap of the circumferences. So this is where we have to visualize a little bit before we ever stick wicks. Basically because you're putting circles inside of circles, you're always going to have those voids that are going to be untouched. Regardless of how many circles you put in here, it's going to be virtually impossible to fill all those voids. That's okay though, as long as we have a good balance. We want to see that the area that's untouched is pretty much equal to the area of the overlap. So basically the idea is the heat from this melt pool, the heat from this melt pool are going to overlap, create an even hotter melt pool in the middle. The heat from that will radiate out and cause melting in the areas that are untouched by the melt pools. Now as we look at this, we can see that we've got more void than we do shaded area. So this configuration may not be our best bet. Just from experience, I'd say it's kind of right on the line of whether it may or may not work. We might try it, but just looking at it, a container this size may be one that we're going to have to triple wick. So let's look at that. Again, we've got the radius of our container drawn out, and now we're going to go back to our wick guide. And we're going to look at the suggestions for a large size container, 2.95 inches to 3.29. And it's telling us that an Eco 14 wick would be best for a container on average about 3 inches in diameter. So again, we're just going to have to visualize how we would want that to look if we were to split this circle into 3 equal parts. So again, we're going to set our compass to 3 inches. And we're going to do the same thing. We're going to set the pencil to the edge. We're going to visualize where we would want our wick placed. That's where we'll set the point of the compass. And we're just going to draw out our circles. So there's our first one. There's our second one. And there's our third one. So as you can see, our area of overlap is much more equal to our voided areas, which just by looking would tell us that this wick and this particular combination has a pretty good chance of working. So again, just like wicking any other candle, we really don't know until we get this made and actually test it. But before we can actually test anything, we have to develop a plan of what we're actually going to be testing. That's what we're doing here. Let's say that we've got this container, but we have a very limited selection of wicks. It looks like our Eco 14 is going to be our pretty good bet, but let's say that all we've got is Eco 8 wicks. We can go back to our wick guide. Looks like an Eco 8 wick is good for a average diameter of 2.5 inches. Well, that's actually an inch smaller than our Eco 14 wicks. So we know if we triple wicked it, it's probably going to be too small. So we might actually be looking at putting 4 wicks in this candle. The method is still the same. We're just going to measure that out with our compass. We're going to visualize this into 4 equal parts. And we're basically going to do the same thing. Place the pencil to the edge. Put the compass point where we would put the wick. Draw out our circle for our melt pool representation. And we're going to do that for each wick. And that's what we're left with. And again, our overlap to void ratio looks pretty close. So this configuration might actually work as well. Again, all we're doing is visualizing and planning at this point. We won't really know until we get some candles made and start our testing. So let's do just that. So we've got our wax melted down. We're using Golden Brand's 464, heated to 150 degrees. We're going to go ahead and add our fragrance oil. For that, we're using Gingerbread Man from the candle maker store. Smells just like a gingerbread man. And to color, we're using Honey Vanilla from Lone Star Candle Supply. So we'll give that just a bit to cool to our pouring temperature. While we're waiting on that, we can go and start wicking our containers. We're going to start with the double wick Eco 16. And if you're having trouble visualizing and lining it up just right, you can actually cut this out, place it in the bottom of your container, mark it with a marker, then you'll have your wicks exactly where you need them. So we have this one double wick, just like our drawing plan for the Eco 16 wicks. Now we're going to triple wick with the Eco 14s. Now this one is triple wick, just like our drawing plan for the Eco 14s. And now we're going to do our 4 wick Eco 8 configuration. And this one is wicked in the configuration that we drew for our Eco 8 wicks. One last step before we pour. Obviously we have to secure our wicks. Of course they don't make wick bars for a 6-inch wide container, so we're going to have to improvise and make our own. For that I'm just going to be using bamboo skewers, and once our candles are poured, the wicks are softened a little bit, we'll be able to manipulate them in place and hold our wicks in place while they dry. We are cool to temperature. Let's zoom in and pour some candles. So we're cooled to 100 degrees. We're ready to pour some candles and set our wicks. So once these are done, we'll be able to come back, work out our test burn, and test our wick sizes and wick configurations. Find out exactly what's going to work best for this particular size container. So our candles are completely dried. We're not really going to know anything though until we do a proper test burn. So now comes the time where we light our candles, start our melt pool timer, and see what kind of results we've got. So we'll give these a few hours, see what kind of melt pools we get, and we'll be able to tell if any of these configurations are going to work for us. So we've had enough burn time to get our melt pools. We'll zoom in and check those out here in a second, but before we do, let's talk about what our actual melt pool is supposed to look like. What we're looking for is a pool of melted wax about 1/4 of an inch deep that spreads across the entire width of the candle. While burning, the flame should be about 1/4 of an inch high, with very little dancing or flickering, no mushrooming, and certainly no smoking. Now to get to this point, we have to do a little bit of math, because we could burn these all day and they're either going to get there or they're not. There has to be some sort of measurable stopping point. So the easiest way to measure that stopping point is this. To achieve a proper melt pool of 1/4 inch, you basically give 1 hour per inch of diameter of your candle. So this candle is about 3.5 inches wide. So if properly wicked, it should take no more than 3 hours to reach its proper melt pool. Now we can do the same thing with these. It's going to be a little bit different though. Obviously, because we're using multiple wicks, we're not going to measure the entire width of the candle. I believe this one was 5.5, 6 inches wide. We're not going to give this 6 hours to reach its proper melt pool. But instead, because we've got 2, 3, or 4 wicks in there that are designed for 2-inch candles, 3-inch candles, we're going to take the measurement value for that single wick. So if this Eco 14 was designed for a 3-inch candle, that's the measurement we're going to go with to reach a proper melt pool. This one should take about 3 hours. Now, of course, because we have the voided areas and the overlap areas, and in a sense we're using the radiant heat of all 3 wicks to completely fill out the candle, your measurements can be a little bit wonky on you, so it's not going to be exact, but it's enough to give you a good general idea. If this hasn't reached a full melt pool in 3 hours, it's probably not going to do so in 5 or 6 hours. But these have all had enough time to do their thing. Let's zoom in and check them out. So we can see the Eco 8s in the 4-wick configuration. Actually a great wick and configuration for this size candle. This is definitely something I would go with. For the Eco 14s and the 3-wick configuration, got a bit of untouched area where the melt pool hasn't spread to. We could probably spread those apart a little bit, do a bit different configuration. These would probably work. I would like to try those again, spread those apart a bit, and I bet that configuration with that wick would actually work for the size candle. And lastly, the 2 Eco 16s. Clearly not enough for this size candle. They're just not big enough. There's not enough overlap area to spread to the voided areas. So no matter what I do with those, no matter how much burn time I give them, they're just going to tunnel. So this is not a good wick and configuration for this size container. And there you go, folks. In a nutshell, that is how you add multiple wicks to an oversized container. I wish I could tell you there was an exact science behind it, but with so many different size containers, so many variables, at the end of the day, it just comes down to a lot of guesswork. But we don't want to shoot completely in the dark, so we can use some new tools and some applied learning and get us pretty close without a whole lot of waste. Hope you guys enjoyed this video. If you have any questions, feel free to leave those in the comment section of this video. You guys make sure you subscribe. Check out all my links in the video description. Thanks for watching, everybody, and I'll see you next time.